What's up guys, today we're going to take a look at a brand new case, the HS420. I have the white and black version both here. These have some unique features, some of which I had never come across before, and they come from a case manufacturer who you've probably never heard of before, HAVN. They're new on the scene, and I'd like to say a big thank you to them for sponsoring this video.
Excellent!
So 3 things before I dive in. First, sponsored video, Paul. Yes, this is a sponsored video. This is not a review, but I'm gonna do my best to give you guys a look at the case and its features. Second, you might say, how dare you, Paul? It's a sponsored video. Obviously, it's gonna be nothing more than a glowing ad for the product. I asked HAVN when they approached me to do this video if I could give my honest feedback, and they said, we are confident in this product, and you can totally do that, so that's what I'm gonna do. And third, one of the most important stats for any new product is how much does it cost? HAVN is starting with the top end of their lineup. So this is a $200 base price case, and that's for the non-VGPU version. We have the VGPU version here, which includes a PCIe 5.0 riser cable, as well as an angled bracket for your bottom fans. This one goes for $270. I've already got some stuff to talk about just with the unboxing process. When it comes to cases, packaging is actually a pretty big deal. And HAVN sent these to me with outer boxes, and that's probably not gonna be how they ship to consumers. Consumers are probably gonna get this box that you see here. But it is very well packed, and they also include instructions on the top. HAVN has product designers that have come from other case manufacturers, such as Fractal Design and Cooler Master. And you can kind of tell that they've done this before. After you get your accessory box out of the top, and your user guide, you can see we have super thick closed cell foam here. And I didn't follow their instructions with the white version. It wants you to take the case out in the traditional manner that I am accustomed to when unboxing cases. Which is to flip the whole thing upside down, shimmy the box off the top, and now the case is out of the box. But one thing I don't think I've seen before is they actually ship it upside down. So when you flip it and take it out of the box that way, it is now right side up. And obviously that's just a small detail when it comes to the product packaging, but I don't know, I thought it was interesting. Ta-da! So I want to show you the accessories that ship with the case, but some of them are inside and we need to open the case to get to them, so let's show you how to do that. The top panel is held on by magnets, and there's a little cloth finger hook right here that you can pull up. They even put a piece of foam in there so it doesn't get like squished down and bent during shipping. Underneath that panel, which does include some dust filtration, by the way, we can see the top of the case. The tempered glass panel, which includes a 90-degree curve, is actually held on by these mounting screws on the top. They include these for shipping. They say if you are just using this at home, you don't need to actually screw these in. But it does ship with these screwed in, and anyone who's like doing system integration work, something like that, anyone who's shipping a system in this case should screw these in. There's also a channel right up here that I'm going to show you in a second that this sits in. So they put little stickers to show you where to grip it, to lift it up and over, and then kind of shift it out, you can see there. That allows you to get a grip on the bottom of this tempered glass piece so you can lift off this entire panel, because it is, as you can see, a 90-degree curved tempered glass piece, and actually looking really like a nice clean curve to me as well. So I just removed all the shipping screws from the top here, and with that, the remaining panels just pop right off. They're held in by magnets. Wow, that's a lot of ventilation. I like ventilation. Aha! I have extricated the VGPU kit. Now we can take a look at accessories. We have a little thank you from the HAVN team, David, Paul, and YC. We have the HS420 user guide, and I wanted to point out that it includes a builder's guide with color highlights of different aspects of case disassembly and installation of motherboard. So it seems to be a well put together instruction manual, and this is especially helpful for first-time builders who are building in a case that might have some unique features, such as all of the removable brackets for mounting radiators. And if I didn't mention, the reason this is HS420, and I know it'll be disappointing to some of you guys, is because of the 420mm radiator support. It can fit one in the bottom down here, it can fit one on the side over here, it can fit one on the top up there, although the bottom one we're not going to be fitting today because we have this angled mount for our bottom intake fans. Here is our HS420 accessory kit that says start here. This bracket here is actually a VESA mount, which is a unique thing to have, but this can actually mount along here, and that's one of the 3 things that you can use this back area for. You might notice it says storage on these pre-installed caddies. There's 4 of those for 3.5-inch drives or 2.5-inch SSDs. But of course you can remove those, and this is one of the areas where you can install a 420mm radiator, or you can install this VESA mount, and that would allow you to install like a full-on monitor in here. Because that's one of the trends people like to do with computer builds these days, is put LCD screens in the case somewhere. This allows you to do any monitor that can mount to a VESA mount, which is pretty unique. Continuing on, we have some cable clips here for cable management, and those snap into the cable management channels. We also have individually bagged screws, some zip ties for helping with your cable management as well. We got some gloves so you don't get unsightly fingerprints all over your tempered glass and inside your case as you're doing your build. Just have an interesting sort of almost rubberized texture on the fingertips. That's curious. And then inside this VGPU kit, we have another piece of tempered glass. And you might be thinking, why is there more tempered glass? I should say not just tempered glass, we also have a couple expansion bay brackets. We have some longer screws for mounting radiators or fans into radiators. This tempered glass piece directs airflow, and I don't know how it mounts yet. I'm gonna check the manual for that. But if you have intakes down here pulling in fresh, cool air, HAVN decided they would like to direct that cool air to go into the side of your GPU versus being contaminated by warmer air that your vertically mounted GPU here might be creating. There are instructions in the manual for how this mounts, but basically it's going to mount kind of right there. That's going to direct the cool air coming into the case that way. That way it can be pulled in by your graphics card's air cooler, and I'll get this all set up for you to give you a better demo in just a minute. A single screw at the back here lets you lift off this angle bracket. And again, this is one of the add-ons or accessories that comes with the VGPU version of the case, as well as the pre-installed PCI Express 5.0 riser cable there. 5.0, yeah, so it's future-proof already for like NVIDIA 50 series and everything. And again, more attention to detail here with the rubber mounting points for this fan bracket, because you might get some vibration with that, and that's going to reduce that. Beneath that intake, you have another removable dust filter, and if you're gonna have a dust filter on the bottom of the case, they can slide out from the front or the back, but I think the best is when they slide out from the side, like this one does. It just makes it easier to pop off and reinstall. While we're down here, we might as well take a look at the bottom of the case, and this is also something that you don't see very often. It's pretty much a solid panel across here. You'd have some rubber feet for whatever surface your case might be resting on. So most of your air intake is going to be pulled in from the side here or through the similar gap that's at the front. The riser cable comes packed with some foam to keep it protected or keep it from banging around and scratching up your motherboard tray. Speaking of the motherboard tray, we have a nice large cutout here for accessing the back panel of your motherboard CPU socket, so that's good for mounting, unmounting, or upgrading CPU cooling solutions. And here we have, ooh, it's almost like, I feel like this is like playing guitar. It's like a bass guitar, Joe. So this is definitely new. I haven't seen any case manufacturers do a cable routing system that is like this, but these combs actually snap onto this routing system, which they call SimpliCable. You pop it open like that and feed it through. So depending on where you have your cables passing through here, whether it's a 24-pin or your front panel USB 3.2 Gen 2, you can snap those on and you can shift them up or down to hug the cables and keep them passing through where you want them to go. So what I'd like to do next is remove this vertical GPU mounts just to show you guys how the mount looks for the non-VGPU versions of the case. You have 3 thumb screws, 2 that mount to this side and 1 that mounts to the back. By loosening those, it will allow you to shift your vertical GPU mount forward or back. So that's going to help depending on how wide your GPU actually is, depending on how fat your air cooler might be. To remove it entirely though, you have 3 more screws back here, and those are tough to get at unless you have a long screwdriver like this one. They did make little pass-throughs right there, so that's appreciated to allow you to reach these, and that should allow us to, yes, remove this entire bracket. So removing this vertical mount is kind of in the mid-range. It's not like the most difficult thing to do, but it is necessary. I was thinking you're going to need to remove it in order to get at the fan mount here. There are 2 140mm fan mounts here at the back of the case. Note that all the fan mounts on this case are specifically 140mm. So apart from the top where you might be able to fit potentially a 360 rad, 140mm is the fan size you're going to want to go for with this case. So my first thought was that you are definitely going to need to remove that vertical mount to mount a fan to this rear bracket, because this screw hole right here is blocked by it. And then Joe pointed out, actually, Paul, you probably need to remove that to install your whole motherboard. And yes, that's true. So removal of this during the build process is going to be necessary. It took us a minute, but I figured out this rear bracket. I thought that this was 140mm fan mounts only. This bracket actually will allow you to mount 120mm fans there as well. And in either case, you get a round opening here that blocks off the frame of the fans, so that gives you kind of a unique look to just see the fan blades in there. Obviously, we have a black fan with the white case. If you had all white fans, I bet that would look a little bit nicer. Or, you know, some people like a high contrast build. All right, so if you're doing 120s, you mount the fan to that bracket, then you mount the bracket into the back of the case. Cool. But this case is more ideally suited for 140mm fans, and for that, you ditch the bracket, you don't use that, and you would just mount the fan straight from the back like this. The manual specifies that you should mount these rear fans first because you're going to be doing other stuff right here that's going to block your access to them. And I also wanted to point out that this rear panel, which again just pops off with some magnets, but they have multiple airflow configurations listed in the manual, and they want you to use this lower fan as an intake. Therefore, they have added a dust filter to it as well. So just pull off the back panel, and then you can pull off that dust filter as well. Rotating around to the rear of the case, you can see this is a dual chamber case. You have a power supply mount here that is a 90-degree rotated. You have a decent amount of space back here for your power supply cables, and that leads right into your cable routing area, where we have several channels with Velcro straps, and they've even put some stickers on here that say recommended for your 24-pin cable, recommended for your 4+4-pin CPU supplemental power to go up and around the motherboard tray and pass through at the top right up there. Here are your front panel connectors. You got USB 3.2 Gen 2, of course. We have a block of front panel connectors, not individual ones. I'm really glad about that. Not much to be done about the bulky USB 3.0 connector, but at least it is all black. And then HD audio, which, I don't know, they can just never seem to get rid of the rainbow vomit on the HD audio. But apart from the front panel, two really nice add-ons here as well, which is dual fan splitters. Basically power fan splitters. You plug one header into your motherboard to control the RPMs. Then you can connect up to 5 more fans to that single unit. And you get not one, but 2 of those. One more down here at the bottom. Rounding out our tour, we have 3 more screws to remove right here, and that allows us to remove this big old thing, bracket. Oh, look at that. It's like one big piece. It's impressive. 2 small screws keep the storage caddies mounted, and you can see we've got 2.5-inch drive mounts there, 3.5-inch drive mounts there. And since 2.5-inch drives are smaller, 2 more screws allows you to release this little caddy so you can do another 2.5-inch drive. So each of these can hold 2 2.5-inch drives or 1 3.5-inch. With this bracket removed, we reveal the mounting points for the VESA mount, and that is right here. It does have a bit of vertical flexibility, so you can shift it up or down by an inch or so. And as you remove the storage caddies, you reveal the mounting points for 120mm fans, 140mm fans, or various 2 and 3 fan radiators that can also mount to that bracket. And something else that I think is nice about this design is if you don't have a 420mm radiator, for example, if you have something smaller, you can still potentially leave one of these caddies on to give yourself a combination of radiator mounting as well as functional storage. We've almost covered everything. I wanted to point out, in case you didn't see it, that there are some additional cable routing channels up here on the top of your power supply shroud cage area. Then up here on the top of the case, we can see another removable bracket here for up to a 420mm radiator or triple fan solution. Some additional cable routing here recommended for your top fan cables. And then your front I/O, which has a couple USB 3.0, that USB 3.2 Gen 2 Type-C connector, and a combo port for mic and headphone. And you also have your power button here, which is recessed. And you can see when we pop the top back on that the top ventilation gaps really match nice and cleanly with the power button as well as your front panel I/O. And with that, the build is complete. Isn't it pretty? Isn't it glorious? And I have now spent a lot more time with this case, so I can give you guys some more feedback on it. Generally speaking, when I recommend cases to new PC builders, I aim for the $70 to $100 range because there's plenty of cases that work just fine for that price. So when I'm presented with a $200 case like the HS420 or $270 if you include the VGPU mounting system, what I have in mind is what extra are you getting for that extra $100-ish? What became immediately apparent to me is that this is a very sturdy case. It's well constructed, it has steel panels that are held together in a rigid sort of fashion. It doesn't have any of the flimsiness that you sometimes get with cases that cost $50 to $70. I could also tell that HAVN has some experienced designers putting a lot of attention to detail in this case. For example, you get screws that are individually bagged. A nice touch, but they're also labeled so you know which ones are for motherboard or which ones are for the power supply. The orange stickers that come on the tempered glass side panel, which are very necessary because it's got a unique way that you remove it and reinstall it, but they peel off quite easily, with a couple of them even having thumb tabs to help with that process, and they leave pretty much no residue. Almost none. If there is some left behind, it wipes off with a microfiber cloth. I also appreciate the extensive use of magnets to hold panels in place to make it easy to remove them or pop them back into place. There are also tons of rubberized mounts or tabs or screw washers even, so that anytime you're mounting something that might vibrate like a hard drive or a spinning fan, it's going to mount to something that's going to dampen that vibration. I also appreciate the amount of thought and attention that went into cable routing and cable management, not just the channels at the back, which are clearly labeled, but even when you're mounting the fans on the back here, there are clear paths where you're supposed to route the cables, as well as little tie-down points or catches for the cables, and even the angled bottom mount here for the 11140 fans that comes with the vertical GPU version of the case has pass-throughs for the cables, as well as places where you can tie it down and feed those back to the rear of the case. And since I mentioned this being a sturdy case, yes, it is also quite heavy, but because there are these oval-shaped channels, you can pretty easily grab the case from this side to lift and move it, and it has a nice center of gravity. And that is certainly appreciated because especially when you get the entire system built, it does get pretty heavy. Now again, this video is not intended to be a review because it's a sponsored video, and I don't think sponsored videos should be classified as reviews, but HAVN did say if I had any criticisms of the case or things to bring up that I was free to do so. I do have a few, they're pretty minor, and actually a lot of them have to do with the vertical GPU mount. But the first thing that stood out to me was that this is a more advanced case. There are a lot of features for new builders that might be totally lost on them, or they might just not understand exactly how they work. So I would recommend this case for people who do have a bit of building experience under their belts. I also highly recommend checking the length and girth of your screwdriver shaft because you do need a long, skinny one, and this is particularly for the VGPU mount because if you need to remove it, which you will if you're going to do a build like this, you'll need to be able to access the screws with a long screwdriver, and if you have something shorter, well, it's just not going to get the job done. I also discovered towards the end of the build that if you're going to be using the VGPU mount, you'll probably want a short screwdriver like this one too, because the PCIe bracket screws still screw down from the bottom, and you need to undo that in order to remove the graphics card, and then in order to remove the GPU vertical bracket if you want to do anything with this lower angled section down here. You can't lift it up and remove it without the GPU and bracket removed. Now for most builders who are just going to build a system in this case once, it's not going to be a concern. Just follow the order of operations as recommended in the manual and you'll be good to go. For me, it caused a bit more difficulty because as I was installing the fans in this case and I wanted to have these nice lower ones on display, I realized that you're probably going to want to shop for reverse airflow fans for these bottom intakes down here so you can get a nice look at them. Because who wants to look at the ugly back brackets of fans? Obviously, that's hideous. I initially had to make the choice between the aesthetic appeal of the brackets facing down but the fans sucking air out of the case rather than pulling air in, which seems to be an issue I've had with a couple builds recently, although this time I was at least a little bit more aware of it at the time. What I decided to do though was a bit of testing, so I set it up in that aesthetically pleasing fashion but not good airflow to get some of the sexy B-roll shots of the system as it should look. And then I ran a 10-minute IDA64 stress test on both the CPU and the GPU as well as the memory just to get an idea of the differences in thermals between the configurations. So starting off with the wrong fan configuration, which is every single fan in the case set to exhaust, After the 10-minute test, the CPU was at 89.5 degrees Celsius max, the GPU hit 78.9 degrees Celsius, and the GPU hotspot was up to 96.6. I then went and flipped those fans to the orientation you see here, so they're sucking air into the case, and that did involve unmounting the graphics card and everything. But I left off the angled glass accessory that's supposed to direct that airflow away from the GPU at first. That resulted in a CPU temperature that was actually a little bit higher by only about 1 degree, 90.6 Celsius. The GPU had a nice temperature drop though, about 6 degrees, down to 72.7. Meanwhile, the hotspot hit 89.7, which is also an improvement. Then I added the airflow glass piece back in for one more test. Here, the CPU temperature was roughly the same at 90.4 degrees Celsius, so maybe it's improved a little bit by getting some more direct airflow up to the AIO. And the GPU was actually right in the middle at 75.4 degrees and 92.8 on the hotspot. And there you have it, guys. That's all I got for a first look, a bit of an assessment, a build, some pros and cons, my feedback on the new HS420 case from a brand new case company, HAVN. I want to say a big thank you to them for sponsoring this video once again, and also being open with the process so I wasn't just making a commercial. I could give you guys some feedback on the case as well. And my feedback is, if you're in the market for a $200 case, this is a really solid entry. It's very competitive. It's got an excellent feature set and it's easy to build in. The vertical GPU mount situation, I'm a little bit more on the fence about, but I am somewhat hesitant when it comes to VGPU mounts in general, because it's mostly an aesthetic thing and it can sometimes take away from some of the case's functionality. That said, the upgrade for the VGPU with the included PCIe 5.0 bracket is very competitively priced at just a $70 premium over the $200 base price of the case. But if you guys are interested, I'll post links to the cases down in the video description below, as well as a link to the HAVN website, because I heard this isn't the only case that they have coming out. They might have something else coming soon too. What could it be? But thank you guys so much for watching this video. A closing reminder to check out my store if you'd like to buy some Paul's Hardware merchandise, including my new mouse mats, which are really awesome. Hitting the thumbs up button, subscribing to my channel, all that good stuff is highly recommended as well. Thanks again for watching, guys, and we'll see you all in the next video.